Hello again. This part we're going to talk about logs and journals, which makes the bookkeeping process even more efficient. Let's have a look at the balance. Every time now, so far, we had a change in the balance. We changed it immediately within the balance sheet itself. As you might understand, that is not very a convenient way to work, because you have to cross everything and add new entries, so it has not much overview and you cannot see how it was before. So we have a kind of different way of working. And the way we do it is that we use what we call a journal. Because the journal gives you an opportunity to write all the financial changes in the balance sheet into different separate reports and keep it up to date during the month or during the booking period. And at the end of the period, you can add all these changes and then change the balance sheet just at once. So you don't have to change the balance sheet every day according to the new information. This has been done at the end of the booking period. And within this journal, we have what we call a journal entry, which represents like one single financial fact. Within this journal, we have several journal entries, and each entry is representing a financial fact within the booking period. So every time something happens, like an invoice or a payment or a purchase, then an entry is made in this journal. And at the end of the period, all these entries are added to the balance sheet at once. In Dutch, we call this journal entry, we call it a journaalpost, and it's kind of the heart of the booking that you make when you have something happening in your company. So let's have a look at an example, and we start with a sales invoice. And if you send a sales invoice to one of your customers, then it means you will have this customer will have a debt to you, so your accounts receivable will increasing. And you see this in the first line of the journal entry. The number of accounts receivable is 130, so this is the number that is referring to the table of ledger accounts. And the amount is 1,500 euros, which is on the debit side of this journal entry. And why it's on the debit side? It is because accounts receivable is also on the debit side of the balance, and when this post is increasing, then we also put the amount on the same side in the journal entry, in this example on the debit side. On the other side is we get revenue sales. Revenue for sales means profit. It means actually it's an auxiliary account for equity, and if equity is on the credit side of the balance, it means when it increases, you have to put it also on the credit side of your journal entry, which you see happening down here. And the same with the VAT and BTW payable. It is 210 euros. This is an amount that we have to pay to the tax authorities later. So until then it's a debt, and the debt is increasing. The debt is on the credit side of the balance, so it's also on the credit side of the journal entry, as you can see here. So you can look at this journal entry as a kind of language that bookkeepers are writing their information down. Let's have another example. Let's look at the the purchase that we did before. We're buying a printer, a laser printer for 700 euros, excluding VAT. So in our journal entry, we will see a line of computer system, and the computer system is an asset. The assets are on the debit side of the balance. So that means this 700 euros, where the computer system is increased with, will be on the debit side of our journal entry too. Same with the VAT and the BTW receivable. The 147 euros that we pay to our a supplier, we know we can get it back from the tax authorities within the next declaration. So until then, it's a claim to this Belastingdienst, and the claim is an asset. Assets are debit, so also the 147 is on the debit side of this journal entry. And finally, the accounts payable. This means the creditors, the suppliers that we bought this printer from, they've sent us an invoice and we have to pay it later. It means until then it's a debt, and debts are on the credit side, on the right side of the balance. And so if it increases like here, we have to put it also on the credit side of the journal entry. And in completion, this is the complete journal entry. Then the same one for the printer, the cartridges and the paper. These are office expenses. Expenses are an auxiliary account for equity, meaning that if you have expenses, they are costs and they will decrease the equity. And because equity itself is on the credit side of the balance, now we have something that decreases it, we put it on the different side. So in this occasion, on the debit side of the balance of the journal entry. And the VAT is the VAT receivable, dus the amount of money that we get in return from the tax authorities, 21 euros. This is a claim to the Belastingdienst. It is increasing again. So normally it's debit. So in this entry we also put it on the debit side because it's increasing. We put it on the same side. And finally we paid with cash in this example. So our cash amount is decreasing in the balance sheet, and because it's decreasing and normally on the debit side, we put it on the credit side in our journal entry. So we know it's like a minus number. We know we have to subtract it from what it's already there. So a few examples of these journal entries. Next subject is what we call logbooks, because as you can see in a company, a lot of financial facts are more or less the same. If you have several sales invoices, they're all alike. The numbers are different, but they all use accounts receivable, they all use VAT payable, etc. So you have a lot of entries that are very much alike, and we have the tendency to put them together so we can kind of make it more efficient. And we do this in what we call logbooks or logs. And we, for every activity that is being used many times within a company, we have a separate log, like for sales, like for purchases, and for your bank changes, for your cash register, and we have one log for everything else. And all these books are, they used to be like real folders in a closet, but now of course it's all digital, but still it's kind of combines all the similar financial facts in your bookkeeping, so you can very efficiently process them in your balance sheet. Let's just have a look at one of these books, a bank book. It contains, of course, also journal entries. And let's say we get a payment from one of our customers for the amount of 1,210 euros. And this is how it looks like in our journal entry. We have a bank ledger account which will increase with 1,210 euros. Bank is debit on the balance sheet, so it's also debit in the journal entry like before. And on the other side, the accounts receivable, it's like the debitors that we have a claim for money for. It decreases with 1,210 euros because now the customer has paid. He is no longer in debt with us. So because it decreases, it's on the different side of the journal entry, this way on the credit side, because accounts receivable normally is on the debit side in the balance. But because it goes down, like a negative number, it's on the credit side of the journal entry. Okay, another payment. When we pay our supplier, it's the opposite way around. The accounts payable, our creditors, on the credit side, on the liability side of the balance, will decrease. So we put the entry on the debit side of the journal entry, like you see here in the first line. And our bank, if we pay this invoice by bank, the amount of 847 euros is on the credit side of the journal entry, because the bank is on the debit side of the balance sheet, but it decreases, so we put it on the different side in the journal entry. So we go to the rules of booking. Now we know how it works. Now we know when to put it on the debit side or the credit side. We can see some pattern. If we look at assets, no matter what assets, but if it's an asset and it will, we know it's on the debit side. So we know if it increases, we also put it on the debit side in our journal entry. If it decreases, we put it on the other side, so it will be credited, as we say it in bookkeeping language. If we look at debts and equity, they are on the credit side of the balance. So if we change those, means that if they increase, we put it on the same side, so on the credit side. And if it decreases, we put it on the different side, meaning the debit side in this case. And finally, the profit and loss entries, they will follow like the equity balance post, because it's an auxiliary account for that. And it meaning that if something that increases equity, we will always put it on the credit side, because equity is on the credit side itself. Like income but also private deposits, they are both increasing the equity, so we put them on the credit side. On the other hand, charges and costs, but also private withdrawings, they decrease the equity, so we put it on the different side of the journal entry, in this example the debit side. Cool. To summarize, we talked about journals and logs, and it's made to make the booking process more efficient and more effective, and we create logbooks for every similar financial facts, so we can kind of put them together in folders. And at the end of the period, we all kind of look at these entries and we complete the balance sheet with the new information. And this is the cycle that goes on every time again. This was for this part. Next part, we're going to talk about investments.